Hi, everybody. Welcome to this episode of The Power of Women Using Their Voices. This is Marissa Pulselli. I am so happy to be here with you tonight. And I cannot tell you how delighted I am to have as my guest on this episode, the magical Kate Brenton. I do not use that term lightly. I am someone who believes in magic, and I know that that's what she is. Kate and I met, 15 years ago.
That's what I was just saying.
Yeah, I think
for sure.
At a coffee house in Center City, and we were both teachers at the time, and our friendship just developed from there. The respect and admiration I have for her as a person and as a professional is just immense, and I'm delighted to have her here with us. Kate is a holistic educator and speaker and a mom and a million trillion other marvelous things. So Kate, I'm going to let you fill in any holes in my introduction before we get to our questions for tonight.
I think your introduction was generous and beautiful. Often there's so much reciprocity when the essence of what we do, which is to help other people by kind of challenging ourselves, because that's really what a teacher does, right? Like if you're not on your own game, you're not really helping. Or challenging yourself, you're not really growing. And it's really neat to have people that come into your life that listen to change their own path, but you can still walk and find each other. And that's how I see you, even though it's really different. So I used to, teach people about participles and 5-paragraph essays. And that was the way that I kind of, ushered their voice. And then I moved to Hawaii for a while, and I also taught writing there. And to keep it tactical, where the philosophy of writing started to change was that I could teach children that were in an education system that didn't honor their culture, that when they could use their cultural voice, and they were like, we're allowed to do that. I was like, yeah, it's called, and kind of being like, this is how voice can change. And that was sort of like the pivot of me from teacher starting to change into giving people permission to be heard, which is different. And so now that I went into deeply into holistic body work, which some people are like, what? But it makes sense, because what you do is you meet people where they are, and people come and they say something like, I don't like my job, or my shoulder hurts. And those two things are not disconnected. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I help people with that. And as you said, I'm a mom. So this is kind of like the Reader's Digest, how that evolved, is I choose to spend more time with my sons. I don't have as much time to spend client to client, and to be able to reach more clients kind of on its own trajectory. Like we were talking before the call, like sometimes life is like, this is really good, and I want you to start taking care of this as well. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so that's when I started to do more speaking and working with people, because on the East Coast, there's a lot about getting people to feel like they're in their body. So before they even want to talk about caretaking their body, you need to start the mental process. And so that's really what I do, is I help people reconnect so they can hear themselves.
Yeah, and I've seen you work that magic, having been the fortunate recipient or participant in one of your corporate workshops, where you were able to weave together the inspirational and the practical in such a profound way that wasn't off-putting to people who aren't in that world, the world of meditation or, hug a tree or whatever the case might be. You actually did have us go out and hug trees. But you were able to bridge that that seeming disparity in a way that made it approachable to everybody. So that's profound and I think very powerful. So my question for you tonight, the big question here is, what does it mean to you to be a woman who is using her voice?
If it's truly her voice in our current world, you are a rare bird. I think I wanted the question, my answer to come organically, but of course I was thinking about it, because we want to be present for those that are taking the time to listen. So thank you. Embodiment is something most of us aren't, self-included. Like in a fast-paced world, there's always things you need to be doing, and when you're operating that way, you're kind of like just about 4 inches away from your center, right? You're just running into the next moment. You're like, I have to do this. So just if you look at that trajectory of the body, you're not actually present. You can't be present. And no one's going to find, I'm not also trying to say like you click into this and you never fall out of it. It's like driving your car. Like you fall in and you fall out. But if you have a support structure and friends and like jobs that you like, it can kind of bring, you can know more readily when you're off center. So I think when you are more embodied, which means you know how you feel, you don't say things like, yeah, I can do that, without even thinking if you can do it. You know, when people say about using your voice, you're thinking of like maybe some of these amazing women right now that are standing on really large stages. That's only one way women are using their voice. One way is really that goes unseen, is just saying, no, I would love to, but I can't. And I think it would be difficult to claim a larger stage if you can't claim your own space and your own way. So I think all of us have a larger stage in our life. It just might not be our calling in this life for thousands of people to know about it. You know what I mean? So I find that those women that are speaking now are, for whatever reason, given the task of like kind of pushing forward a larger road and having open conversations, because you start to hear women say like, oh, here's also what I want to say. I think when you ask a woman something, I'm hesitating, I'm like, is this stereotypical? But let's just, give us some space. If you ask her something, that if she can do something, a lot of the times women are taught to consider the external before the internal. How badly would it help you? I guess I could. How many people are going to benefit from it? And it's not to say that that doesn't become a piece and you want to have that available, but if that's your only barometer, then that forward motion of not having any clue of how you feel just becomes a schism inside of yourself and you don't even know why. So you're like, oh, I feel nervous, or I have anxiety, or I can't sleep, or I don't know why I just can't, whatever it is. And all of those things will also, I think, happen to all of us in cycles at different times. We feel anxious. Our sleep cycle might be disrupted. We might go through different phases. But I think a woman that possesses her voice at least knows that and close to most of the time that she's to be considered. Because if you're embodied, then you kind of sit back, and if you think about your body self, like, which people don't, your throat is a part of the system. So you can't just talk if it's not connected to the rest of you.
Right.
So if you don't know how you're going on inside, it doesn't really matter what you say to somebody else, because it's not coming from you, which could be something as simple as, do you want pizza for dinner? And instead of going like, not really, but it'll make you happy. So yeah, so that's my long answer to what I think. But I think those are the muscles that stretch, so that dream stage that you have of possessing a job or a platform or doing a craft, space for that doesn't come unless you start to check in internally about what might be blocking your own voice from yourself.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so much there. And just leading to this idea of sort of self-disqualifying, disqualifying your own needs, your own wishes, your own perspective and stance. What you mentioned brings to mind the comparison between being in a fight or flight response, where everything is sort of like automatic and all you can think about is survival, and being in a state of wellness, some degree of relaxation, where you're more or less integrated and able to operate from a more rational and centered position, rather than just reacting to each thing as it comes up because you can't take a breath.
Right.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you for that. So I have one other question for you, and that is that, as women are struggling to or working towards claiming their voice, it's not always easy. It's not always something that we even consider that we have to do or is open to us to do. What message do you have for a woman who is sort of coming to this realization that is something that she can step into?
My first response would be, is that it's worth it. Because I think sometimes, because women can go the vertical so easily and hold so many other responsibilities aside from herself, a lot of times we'll think, it's just easier if I do it. It's just easier if I don't say it. It's just easier if no one's fighting. It's just, so I think it will could be slightly treacherous depending on how many people and jobs are reliant upon you not speaking up for yourself. So this isn't necessarily one of those things where you'll get congratulated for it. However, there's this image I've heard about, like, kind of when you come back to yourself, that the more you start to reclaim that voice, which I would seriously practice in really small ways. And for some of us, that could be a big thing. But I think also we forget, like, how significant just being like, no, I want to stay home.
The small and practical.
Because if you know, I liken it to this. If you had a friend you hadn't talked to in 10 years, there's some friends that you hadn't talked to in 10 years and you can, like, no problem. Like, you understand where they're coming from. But some friends, if they called, you'd be like, what do you want? You know, I haven't heard from you, and now you want to go to lunch. I don't even like the place that you want to go to lunch. Like, why am I going to go out of my, it's kind of like, that's what your internal voice is saying. It's like, oh, now you want answers? Like, you didn't stand up for me for 10 years, and now you want me to magically tell you everything about what I did. So I think if you are looking to reclaim your voice, and it looks like, I really don't like my job, but I don't think I can work anyplace else. I really don't like how my parent or a relative talks to me, but I have cultural values that means that I can't do anything about it. I don't think that you're trapped, but I think that as wonderful as it is to go outside and to check in with others on their opinions, you know, we check in with different friends for different reasons. Like, when we want to just be supported in something, we check into the friend that's like, yeah, buy that, you know? You don't call the friend that's like, I thought you were paying down your credit card. Like, you don't call that friend, you know? And we need all the friends, right?
Right.
They're all reflections of us, right? Because that's why we have them. So
our board of directors, they all have a different role.
Exactly. They can engage with us in the way that we need to be met. But if you start to, and really, like, I think when people listen, like, okay, claim my voice, like, what am I going to do? The phenomenal answer is, you're going to bring some silence into your life. And that can be really traumatizing and terrorizing, because depending on how absent silence is, there could be a floodgate of things that you aren't ready to hear, or of distractors. And I think that happens, again, for everyone, or I'll at least say for myself included. It's not like knowing this information that it, you know, I can sometimes catch, like, wow, I really am watching a lot of Netflix. I wonder what I'm avoiding, you know? So those behaviors, I think silence and journaling to yourself, because the inroads of communication, like that friend that called, maybe there isn't, if you have patience to understand their motive of reconnecting with you, you might joyously find that what was the basis of that friendship flourishes. And people often don't think about themselves like that. But I would say, especially for women in a youth-obsessed culture, there are attitudes about women, or things that women are allowed to do or perceive, or where they're allowed to have power, that seems to only be granted to 20 and under, which is terribly convenient, because it's normally over 20 that's mothering our next generation. And it is the grandmothers that are giving us the indicators of where we actually need to be going. And currently, no one's really interested. I often say that as soon as you're pregnant, that's the baby comes out, and then no one's really interested in your power anymore. Not that you have to have children, but no one wants to hear about what you have to do. No one wants to talk about menopause. Not even a conversation. And if you think that those aren't affecting your ability to articulate yourself, I would encourage you to think about that, because the culture is asking that there's a time limit on your opinion. So for us to have a shift and a change, we kind of need to go back to being strong enough inside of ourselves. So when someone's like, you don't know what you're talking about, you're not even you don't even feel like you have to defend yourself. You know, that's the place to go to. So it was a long answer, but that's it.
No, well, I mean, what you're really advocating is kindling and nurturing a friendship with yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a beautiful note to conclude that conversation. Kate, where can people find you? Tell us a little bit about that and anything that you might have that you want to share with folks that's going on.
For sure. You can find me at my website, which is wisdomofone.com. And on Instagram, my handle is Kate M. Brenton. I work with clients one-on-one in person. I also work with clients remotely if they're looking for a mindset shift. And I also am, you can find me in a collaboration with yourself.
Yay!
We're doing, on that note of claiming your space and being seen. And we're going to be talking about practical ways to like kind of get back into that embodiment and feel like, what are my core values and where do I want to move forward on? So I work with people in person, a lot of them on remotely. And the best way to see if we're a good fit is to just reach out. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So go onto the website and send a, hey, I saw you on this. And what do you think? Because I think one thing women also need to be reminded of is that they get to choose who they're vulnerable with and they have the right to ask questions. So thank you so much. This was a wonderful moment. I really appreciate you making space for me to speak.
Oh, it was my absolute honor and pleasure. And I will be sure to, when I post the video, include your contact information so people will be able to find you easily. Thank you so much, Kate, for joining us today. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in or catching it on the replay. Leave your questions here, leave your comments, reach out to Kate. Trust me, you will not regret reaching out to this person. Whether you end up working with her directly or not, the interaction will be a blessing. And I will look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The Power of Women Using Their Voices. Have a great night, everybody.